Commander Kethver walked slowly into the large training room. His heavy footsteps echoed off the metal walls. The young alien cadets sat in neat rows, their bright eyes full of excitement. They had been waiting all morning for this special lesson. Kethver, the body was covered in thick dark armor that looked like it had seen many battles. Deep cuts and burn marks decorated his chest and arms. His face was hard and serious, with 4 yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. When he moved, the cadets could hear the soft clicking of his claws against the floor. "Today, we learn about humans," Kethver said in his deep voice. The room became completely quiet. All the young aliens leaned forward in their seats. A small cadet named Vexty raised one of his 6 arms. "Sir, are we finally going to hear about how we defeated the weak humans?" Several other cadets made excited, chittering sounds. They had heard stories from older soldiers about the great victory over the soft-skinned creatures from the planet called Earth. The stories always made humans sound small and helpless. Kethver's eyes grew dark. "Defeated them," he laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Is that what they tell you now?" The cadets looked confused. They whispered to each other in their native language, wondering what their commander meant. 30 years ago, I was young, like you," Kethver continued. "I believed humans were easy to beat. I thought they were weak because they had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor, no poison, just soft pink skin and small teeth." He walked to the front of the room and pressed a button on the wall. A large screen appeared, showing pictures of human soldiers. The cadets stared at the images. The humans looked so small compared to their own kind. "I remember the day we first learned about humans," Kethver said. "Our generals were very excited. They said humans had spread too many planets, taking resources that belonged to us. They said it would be easy to take everything back." One cadet raised her hand. "But sir, look how tiny they are. Our smallest warrior is twice their size." "Yes," Kethver nodded. "That is exactly what we thought. Our scientists studied human bodies. They found that humans could not run as fast. As us, they could not lift as much weight. Their bones broke more easily. Their skin tore like paper." The cadets made sounds of agreement. It seemed obvious that humans would lose any fight. "So we made our plans," Kethver continued. "We would attack their colonies first. Small groups of humans defending mining stations and farming worlds. We thought they would surrender immediately when they saw our ships." The commander's voice became quieter. "I was chosen to lead one of the first attack groups. I was proud. I thought I would come back home as a hero with stories of easy victory." He touched one of the larger scars on his chest. "Instead, I learned that there are different kinds of strength." A young cadet named Zorik spoke up. "What do you mean, sir?" Kethver was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice sounded tired. "I mean that we learned humans do not fight the way we fight. We fight for honor, for glory, for our leaders. Humans fight for something much more dangerous." "What do they fight for?" asked Vexty. "They fight for each other," Kethver said, "and that makes them the most terrifying enemy in the galaxy." The cadets looked at each other with confusion. Fighting for others seemed strange to them. In their culture, each warrior fought for their own glory and status. "I will tell you about Lieutenant Kim Tae," Kethver said. "He was the first human I ever met in battle. He taught me that small does not mean weak, and quiet does not mean defeated." The commander walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Kim Tae was defending a small mining station with only 12 other humans. "We brought 300 warriors. Our ships could destroy the station in seconds. We thought Kim Tae would see our power and give up immediately." He turned back to face the cadets. "Instead, Kim Tae sent us a message. Just for words, come and take it." The room was completely silent now. The cadets could sense that something important was coming. "That was the day I learned that humans are not just fighters," Kethver said. "They are something much worse. They are protectors, and a protector will do anything, sacrifice anything, to keep their people safe." The commander looked at each cadet's face. "Tomorrow, I will tell you what happened when we tried to take Kim Tae's station. I will tell you about the 13 days of fighting that followed, and you will understand why. 30 years later, I still wake up at night remembering the sound of human battle cries." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "Tonight, think about this question. What would you do if someone threatened everything you loved? How far would you go to protect it?" As Kethver left the room, the cadets sat in silence, their excitement replaced by something else entirely. For the first time, they began to wonder if the stories they had heard about humans might not be the whole truth. The next morning, Commander Kethver returned to the training room. The young cadets were already waiting, sitting quietly in their seats. Their excitement from yesterday had turned into something more serious. They had spent the night thinking. About his question, Kethver noticed the change in their faces. "Good," he thought. They were beginning to understand that this would not be a simple story of victory. "Yesterday, I told you about Lieutenant Kim Tae," he began. "Today I will tell you what happened when we attacked his mining station." The commander activated the wall screen again. This time it showed a picture of a small space station floating near an asteroid. The station looked tiny and helpless. "Mining station, Kappa 7," Kethver said. It had 13 human defenders and basic mining equipment. No weapons, no shields, no escape ships. Our intelligence reports said it would fall in less than 1 hour. A cadet named Morthok raised his hand. How many warriors did you bring, sir? 300 of our best fighters, Kethfer replied, plus 2 warships and heavy attack vehicles. We thought we were being generous by bringing so many against such a small target. The cadets made small laughing sounds. It did seem like too much force for such a tiny station. I commanded the first landing party, Kethfer continued. 50 warriors in full battle armor. We landed at the main entrance and expected immediate surrender. His voice became quieter. Instead, we found the entrance had been sealed with metal plates. When we cut through, we discovered the first lesson humans would teach us. The commander touched a scar on his left arm. The corridor behind the door was filled with explosive traps, but these were not military explosives. Kim Tae had used mining charges, the tools they used to break apart asteroids. One cadet gasped he turned mining equipment into weapons. Yes, Kethver nodded. We lost 17 warriors in the first few minutes. Not to advance military technology, but 2 simple tools used in clever ways. The cadets were no longer making any sounds. They stared at their commander with wide eyes. But that was just the beginning, Kethver said. We advanced deeper into the station. Every room was a trap. Kim Tae had turned ventilation systems into gas dispensers. He used industrial lasers as defensive weapons. Even the artificial gravity was changed to confuse us. How did he prepare all this so quickly? Asked Vexty. That was our second lesson, Kethver replied. Humans do not panic when they see impossible odds. Instead, they become more creative. While we were landing our ships, Kim Tae was turning his entire station into a weapon. The commander began pacing back and forth. It took us 6 hours to reach the main control room. 6 hours to travel through a space station that should have taken 30 minutes to capture completely. He stopped walking and looked directly at the cadets. When we finally broke into the control room, we expected to find Kim Tae cowering in fear. Instead, we found him calmly working at his computer terminal. What was he doing? Asked a cadet from the back row. He was downloading the station's memory files and sending them to other human colonies, Kethver said, even though he knew he was about to die. He was making sure other humans would learn from his defense tactics. The room was completely silent now. Kim Tae looked up at us when we entered. The commander continued. He was bleeding from several wounds. His left arm was clearly broken. But he smiled at us and said, "Took you long enough." Kethver's voice became very quiet. Then he showed us the third lesson humans would teach us. He pointed to a red button on his control panel and said, "This station's reactor is set to overload. I can stop it, or I can let it explode and take your ships with it." The cadets leaned forward in their seats. "We thought we had one," Kethver said. "We thought Kim Tae would bargain for his life. Instead, he asked us one question. Will you promise to leave the other mining stations alone?" "What did you say?" whispered Morth. "I told him we would attack every human settlement until they all surrendered," Kethver replied. "I thought this would make him afraid." The commander's eyes grew distant. Kim Tae nodded sadly and said, "Then I guess we understand each other." And he pressed the button. Several cadets made shocked sounds. The explosion destroyed the station, Kim Tae, and half of my landing force. Kethver continued. It also damaged both of our warships. What should have been an easy victory became our first defeat. He walked back to the window. But the real defeat came later, when we attacked the next mining station. The humans there had received Kim Tae's files. They knew exactly how he had fought us. Kethver turned back to face his students. 12 more stations. 12 more Kim Taes, each one fighting differently, but all of them fighting to the end. By the time we finished taking the mining colonies, we had lost more warriors than we had gained resources. The commander looked at each cadet's face. That was when our generals decided we needed to attack Earth itself. They thought if we could defeat the humans on their home world, the colonies would surrender. He smiled grimly. They had no idea what was waiting for us there. Commander Kethver stood at the front of the room, his 4 eyes looking far away as if he could still see the events he was about to describe. The cadets sat completely still, waiting for him to continue his story. After we captured the mining stations, he began slowly. Our leaders made a terrible decision. They decided to attack Earth directly. The wall screen changed to show a blue and green planet covered with white clouds. The cadets stared at the beautiful world that looked so peaceful from space. "Earth," Kethver said. "The human homeworld." Our generals thought if we could conquer their main planet, all the other human colonies would give up fighting. A cadet named Yixara raised her hand. "How many humans lived there?" "Sir, 8 billion, Kethver replied. The cadets made surprised. Sounds that was more people than lived on their entire home system. But our leaders were not worried about the numbers. The commander continued. They said most humans on Earth were not soldiers. They were farmers, workers, families with young children, civilians who would not fight. Kethver's voice became bitter. This was perhaps the biggest mistake we ever made. He pressed another button and the screen showed pictures of human cities. Tall buildings, busy streets, normal people going about their daily lives. I was promoted to battle group commander after the mining station fights. Kethver said, I led the attack on the human city called Seoul. Intelligence told us it had 10 million civilians and only 50,000 soldiers. The commander touched the deep scar across his chest. What they did not tell us was about Captain O'Done. Who was she? Asked Vexty. O'Dayun commanded the Seoul defense grid. Kethver replied. She was a small human female, maybe half my size. When we first saw her picture, we laughed. She looked like she could barely lift a weapon. He walked to the center of the room. We landed our forces at dawn on a clear spring day. 1 million warriors, the largest invasion force in galactic history. We expected the city to surrender. Before noon, the cadets listened carefully, imagining the massive army descending on the human city. Instead, we found that O'Dayun had spent months preparing for our arrival. Kethver continued. Every street had been turned into a trap. Every building was a fortress. Every civilian had been trained to fight. But sir, interrupted Morthok, surely untrained civilians could not fight real warriors. Kethver laughed grimly. That is what we thought. We were wrong. O'Dayun had taught them that anyone could be a soldier if they were protecting their home. The screen changed to show damaged buildings and torn streets. The first day, we advanced 6 blocks into the city. Each block cost us hundreds of warriors. The humans used everything as weapons. Construction equipment became tanks. Office buildings became sniper nests. Even the underground train tunnels were filled with explosives. How did the civilians know how to fight so well? Asked a cadet. Because, Dayun had taught them, Kethver replied. She did not just train soldiers. She trained grandmothers to make bombs. She taught children to carry messages through dangerous areas. She showed shopkeepers how to turn their stores into defensive positions. The commander's voice grew quieter. On the third day, I led an attack on a school building that was being used as a command post. We expected to find a few human soldiers inside. He paused, his claws clicking nervously. Instead, we found 30 human civilians, teachers, parents, even some older children. They had been left behind to slow us down while others escaped. Did they surrender? Asked Dix. Said simply, they fought us for 4 hours. A human teacher named Park Sung-min held the main stairway by himself for almost an hour. When his weapon broke, he used chairs and desks. When those were gone, he used his bare hands. The cadets stared in shock. Fighting without weapons seemed impossible to them. But the moment that changed everything happened on day 15. Kethver continued. We had surrounded a hospital where O'Dayun was coordinating refugee evacuations. She could have escaped through the underground tunnels, but she refused to leave until every civilian was safe. The commander walked back to the window. One personally led the final assault on the hospital. We broke through their defenses and cornered O'Dayun in the main lobby. She was alone, wounded, out of ammunition. What did she do? Whispered Vexty. She stood in front of the elevator where the last group of civilians was escaping. Kethver said, mothers with babies, old people who could barely walk, wounded children. O'Dayun looked at me and my 50 warriors, and she smiled. The room was completely silent. Then she said something I will never forget. The commander continued. She said, my people are behind me. If you want them, you will have to go through me first. Kethver touched his chest scar again. I thought she was being foolish. One small human against 50 trained warriors. It should have been over in seconds. His voice became almost a whisper. Instead, O'Dayun fought us for 23 minutes. She used the hospital equipment, the furniture, even pieces of broken glass. When we finally defeated her, 37 of my warriors were wounded, and 8 were dead. The cadets sat in stunned silence. As O'Dayun was dying, she looked up at me and said, the evacuation is complete. Thank you for giving us enough time. Kethver turned back to face his students. That was when I realized we were not fighting an army, we were fighting an entire species that had decided to become warriors to protect each other. Commander Kethver returned to his position at the front of the room. The cadets noticed that his hands were shaking slightly as he prepared to continue his story. Whatever he was about to tell them was clearly the most difficult part of his memories. The siege of Seoul lasted 73 days. He began by day 60. We had taken most of the city, but the cost was terrible. We had lost half our invasion force. Our generals were becoming angry and desperate. The wall screen showed images of a destroyed cityscape with smoke rising from countless fires. The cadets could see the massive damage from the long battle. That was when we received intelligence about a special target, Kethver continued. A human nursery facility on the outskirts of the city. Our scouts reported it was defended by only one human soldier. A cadet named Zikmer raised his hand. Just one soldier. Sir. Yes, Kethver nodded. Private Yunari. She was 22 years old. Fresh from basic training, she had been assigned to guard the facility while the main evacuation took place. The commander's voice became very quiet. Our generals saw this as an opportunity. They thought, if we could capture the human younglings, we could force the remaining defenders to surrender. The screen changed to show a simple concrete building surrounded by a small playground. It looked peaceful and innocent, nothing like a military target. I was ordered to take my full battalion to capture the facility, Kethfer said, 300 warriors against one young human female. It seemed like an easy mission after all the hard fighting we had done. He began pacing slowly across the front of the room. We surrounded the building at dawn. I expected Yunari to surrender immediately when she saw how outnumbered she was. Did she? Asked Vexti. Kethfer stopped pacing and looked directly at the cadet. No. Instead, she activated the facility's defense systems and sent us a message over the radio. What did she say? Whispered Yexpra. She said, there are 47 children in this building, ages 3 to 8. If you want to hurt them, you will have to kill me first. The cadets made uncomfortable sounds. Even in their warrior culture, attacking younglings was considered dishonorable. I tried to negotiate. Kethfer continued. I told her we would not harm the children if she surrendered. I promised her safe treatment as a prisoner of war. The commander's claws clicked against his armor as he fidgeted nervously. Yunari's response taught me the final lesson about human nature. She said, I do not trust you to keep your promises. These children are my responsibility, and I will not abandon them. Then what happened? Asked Morthok. She began to fight. Kethfer said simply, 1 human against 300 warriors. It should have been over in minutes. The screen showed a diagram of the nursery building. The cadets could see how small it was compared to the attacking force surrounding it. But Yunari had spent the previous weeks preparing. The commander continued. She had turned every room into a defensive position. She had set up automated weapon systems using the building's maintenance equipment. She had even booby the playground outside. Kethfer touched a scar on his neck. This came from a toy rocket that she had filled with explosives. She threw it at my command group from a second-floor window. The cadets stared in amazement. Using children's toys, as weapons seemed impossible to them. For 18 hours, Yunari held us off. The commander said, 18 hours of continuous fighting. She moved from room to room, using every advantage she could find. When her ammunition ran out, she made weapons from furniture and kitchen equipment. How was she able to last so long? Asked a cadet from the back row. Because she was not just fighting for herself, Kethfer replied. Every few hours, we could hear her talking to the children over the building's intercom system. She would tell them stories, sing songs, promise them that help was coming. The commander's voice cracked slightly. She was keeping their spirits up even while she was fighting for her life. Near the end, we finally breached the main entrance. Kethfer continued. I led the assault team into the central hallway. We expected to find Yunari collapsed from exhaustion. He paused for a long moment. Instead, we found her standing in front of the door to the children's room. She was covered in blood from dozens of wounds. Her uniform was torn and burned, but she was still holding her weapon, still ready to fight. The room was completely silent. Even the sound of breathing seemed too loud. I looked at her and saw something that broke my spirit, Kethfer said. I saw a young female who was ready to die to protect younglings that were not even her own offspring. She had no family connection to these children, no tribal obligation. She was fighting for them simply because they needed protection. What did you do? Whispered Yixara. Kethfer Surais looked down at the floor. I ordered my warriors to stop advancing. For the first time in my military career, I refused to follow orders. The cadets gasped in shock. Disobeying orders was the worst crime a warrior could commit. I walked up to Yunari and told her that we would withdraw. The commander said. She looked at me with suspicion and asked why. Kethfer raised his head and looked directly at his students. I told her the truth. I said that any species that produced individuals like her deserved to survive. We had learned that humans were not just fighters or defenders. They were guardians of something precious that we had forgotten how to value. What happened to the children? Asked Vexti. They were evacuated safely, Kethfer replied. And 3 days later, our entire fleet received orders to withdraw from Earth. The war was over. Commander Kethfer stood quietly for a moment, letting the weight of his previous story settle over the cadets. The young aliens sat in complete silence, their eyes fixed on their scarred instructor. The story of Yunari had clearly affected them deeply. That was 30 years ago, Kethfer finally said. The war ended, but the lessons we learned changed everything about how we see the galaxy. He walked over to the large window that looked out into space. The cadets could see stars twinkling in the darkness, and the shapes of several spacecraft moving slowly between the planets. After we withdrew from Earth, our leaders spent months trying to understand what had happened. The commander continued. How had we, the greatest military force in the galaxy, been defeated by a species we thought was weak? A cadet named Plex raised his hand. But sir, did we really lose? We took many of their colonies. Kethfer turned around and looked at the young alien. We took empty buildings and broken equipment, but we never broke their spirit. Every human we defeated made 10 more humans stronger. Every colony we captured taught other colonies how to fight better. The screen on the wall activated. showing images of human and alien ships working together in space. The cadets stared in confusion at the peaceful scene. What you are seeing now, Kethfer explained, is the result of our real education about humanity. Those are human ships working alongside our own vessels. Working together? Asked Vexty in surprise. But I thought humans were our enemies. They were, Kethfer nodded, until we learned to see them differently. 3 years after the war ended, a new threat appeared in our galaxy. A species called the Devourers began attacking planets on the outer rim. The commander pressed a button and the screen showed images of strange, insect-like creatures destroying cities. The cadets made nervous sounds as they looked at the frightening aliens. The Devourers were unlike anything we had ever fought, Kethfer said. They consumed entire planets, leaving nothing behind. They could not be reasoned with or negotiated with. They only knew how to destroy. What did we do? Asked Yitzhara. Our military commanders developed battle plans, Kethfer replied. Traditional strategies, proven tactics. We sent our best fleets to stop the Devourers. He paused dramatically. We were completely defeated. The Devourers destroyed half our forces in the first month. The cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their people were supposed to be the strongest warriors in the galaxy. That was when someone suggested, asking the humans for help. The commander continued. Many of our leaders refused at first. How could the species we had just been fighting teach us anything about warfare? Kethfer smiled slightly. But a few wise generals remembered Lieutenant Kim Tae, Captain Oh Dae-yoon, and Private Yunari. They remembered how humans had defeated us using methods we never expected. The humans agreed to help us, asked Morthok. Not immediately, Kethfer replied. First, they wanted to understand why we had attacked them. So we told them the truth. We explained that we had thought they were weak and that we wanted their resources. The commander walked back to the center of the room. The human representative, who came to negotiate, was an old soldier named Colonel Park Minjun. He had fought in the Seoul Siege. He had lost friends and family in our attacks. Was he angry? Asked a cadet. I expected him to be, Kethfer said. Instead, he asked us one simple question. Do you understand now that we were never your enemies? We were just people trying to protect our homes and families. The room fell silent as the cadets considered this question. That was when we truly understood, the commander continued. Humans had never wanted to fight us. They had fought because we had threatened what they loved. Everything they did, the clever traps, the desperate defenses, the refusal to surrender, it was all to protect their pack. Suddenly, alarm bells began ringing throughout the academy. A young officer rushed into the room, his face showing excitement and fear. Commander, the officer called out. Human ships approaching the academy. Should we prepare defenses? Instead of looking worried, Kethfer smiled broadly. Stand down, all weapons, he ordered. Those ships are expected. The cadets looked confused. As their commander walked to the window, outside, they could see sleek human vessels moving gracefully through space alongside their own ships. Today is a special day, Kethfer announced. We are beginning joint training exercises with human forces. Some of you will have the opportunity to learn from human instructors. Learn from humans, gasped Vexty. Yes, Kethfer nodded. Because we discovered that humans are the best teachers in the galaxy when it comes to the most important military skill of all. What skill is that? Asked Yixara. The commander looked at each of his students. The skill of knowing what is worth fighting for. Humans taught us that true strength does not come from claws or armor or advanced weapons. It comes from having something so important that you will sacrifice everything to protect it. He pointed to the human ships outside. Those vessels are named after the humans who taught us this lesson. That lead ship is called the Yunari. The crew inside includes both humans and our own people, working together to protect the galaxy from threats like the Devourers. Kethfer walked back to his position at the front of the room. The humans helped us defeat the Devourers not through superior technology or numbers, but through superior understanding of what we were fighting for. They taught us to see every planet we defended as someone's home, every civilian as someone's family member. So we are allies now, asked Plexcore. More than allies, Kethfer replied. We are partners in protecting something bigger than ourselves. The humans showed us that the strongest military force in the galaxy is not the one with the best weapons, but the one that fights for the right reasons. As the human ships continued their graceful approach to the academy, Kethfer delivered his final lesson to the cadets. Remember, this above all else, he said. Never underestimate someone who fights not for glory or conquest, but for love. The humans taught us that such fighters are unbeatable, because they have already won the only victory that truly matters.